since we've owned pubs and bars and restaurants and things, and you've been around, talked to a lot of people, it seems like we do run into some different people that call themselves atheists or don't identify themselves atheists, but they have an atheist perspective. What, just thinking about, I know we want to put together some, we're calling it a boot camp, to help people, especially Christian people, be able to discuss with these people that you talk to on a regular basis, have an intelligent conversation and know how to approach and, well, who are these people? Who are we talking to? I have a lot of people say, I've never met an atheist.
Yeah.
Yeah. So who do you see out there?
I always break it down into about three groups, broad groups. One is the charlatans, meaning the traveling medicine show that I'm still harping on with Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins, Hawking, and Hitchens. I like to pick on the ones, real quotes from real guys who give you plenty of ammunition to deal with. And they're the stars, right? If you put yourself out to be Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, then you better be able to stand up to scrutiny.
Yeah.
Okay? And so I feel safe going after Sam Harris because
he calls himself
he says, this is what I tell you, I'm a public intellectual, So that's one group. But I'm just saying to you, the problem is they are deceivers. They go out of their way. They don't tell you the whole truth. They evade the weakness of their own position. An honest guy in academics will tell you what the weakness is in his position.
Well, that's the beauty of learning.
Yes.
Right? That's what academics
so that's
say.
why you're discussing things. A guy says to you, Bill, I actually believe this, but I see this weakness in my position. That's an honest man. Sam will not fall under that mistake. Okay, so he's never going to tell you what the weakness of his position is. And he knows the strength of your position, but he won't tell anybody that because he's out to win. And that's why I say when you come to this boot camp, if you come, the first thing I'm going to surprise you with is I don't want you to win. I want you to get rid of that idea that you're going to win when you talk to a guy. Yeah. My experience is that the practical atheist, who's really the group number 3. Sam's and the charlatans in group number 1, the elite ones. Daniel Dennett might be in there, Lawrence Krauss, some of the well-known speakers and evangelists for the atheist religion. So when you come to number 2, there's a small group of these guys that you'll run into who, it's the best thing I can do is give you the Chesterton quote on George Bernard Shaw. They were friends. One believed that God existed, one did not. And he would say about George Bernard Shaw, he was greatly hampered by the fact that he could only lie to you when he thought he was telling you the truth. In other words, he was greatly hampered in their discussions because he could only lie to you when he thought he was telling you the truth. In other words, Chesterton is saying the guy was wrong. Yeah. He was actually lying to me about the truth. Yes. But he didn't know it. He believed it so much. So George Bernard Shaw is an honest guy as compared to Sam Harris. Okay, so especially Richard Dawkins. I've been picking on Sam today, and Richard Dawkins is a much more reasonable person to pick on than Sam. I can tell you that. Really, I have a soft spot sort of for Sam. So the third group is the largest group, the practical atheists. You've got the charlatans, you've got the George Bernard Shaws, which aren't a large group. They're misled, and they actually believe it, and you can be very sympathetic to them and kind of coax them down out of that position.
And they're kind of the people that, like at school, they've heard it stated so many times.
Right, and they believe it.
So they actually believe it, they bought it.
And then you get what I call the weekend frat boys who come to the atheism, who are the guys, when I was young and they would come to the places downtown that were rough and there were, girls for sale and all those kinds of things, and some really tough characters. They like to mill around, in that group, but they didn't belong, right? You don't wear a leather sweater to some of these places, right? That would be a mistake. So, but they were those kind of guys. Well, most of the young guys that I see, and I tease about it, but I believe it, they are adolescents now to 40, and I'm sick of it.
We know.
So no women can't find a husband because there aren't any out there to have. Nobody wants another child who's full-grown, been shaving for 20 years, and you have to teach him how to do things. So that's missing. Something in this culture, we call that progress somehow. I don't see it. Grow up, get married, have some responsibility, okay? That's how you grow up even faster. So when you see these guys, they repeat the slogans. This third group, the weekend cowboy type, is exactly who you see almost all the time. It's the young college student, the guy in that atheist church service, young, white, right, male. He's loud, he's cocky, but he doesn't know anything. He repeats those same stale questions. And like I say to you over and over, I bet if you give me, for $10, I'll bet I can guess 3 of the questions he'll ask me, right, if he asks me 6 questions. Why? He's got a script he goes through. The problem with that is I can't discuss with him because he doesn't know enough to discuss. See, a discussion is an exchange of ideas. You're lucky if you can keep him in the conversation. Normally, he just wants to give you his 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then he's out the door because he's afraid that I'll figure out he doesn't know more than 1, 2, 3, 4. So I already know when he started with number 1 that he only knows 1, 2, 3, 4. I know him better than he knows himself because I've seen him before. He had a different name. This time it's Todd. It was Greg. It'll be Lance next time. But it's the same guy, and he's got the same attitude, and he knows as precious little about what he believes. Now that guy, to me, I don't know whether to laugh at him, be angry with him. I don't know really what to do because I keep thinking he's bright enough to do better than this. But here I am babying him into a conversation because he's not a grown-up enough to have a discussion where he can actually exchange ideas. Right? And I'm thinking, where did he get this? Well, he got it out of the school system. I'm quite certain of that. And they've taught him again, have a viewpoint. State your viewpoint. Do I need to know anything about what I think? No, don't worry about what's behind it. You don't need facts and stuff are kind of cumbersome. You know what I mean? They're narrowing. It's hard. If you start using facts, people will find out you made a mistake. Tell them what your viewpoint is and just say it powerfully. You see, and it's what in communism has worked a lot, to give you an idea. This idea of constant misrepresentation of ideas has great force behind it. And they've kind of followed this script without knowing that that's where it comes from. This idea that you can just misrepresent. Now, some congressmen I've been listening to have this down. They can misrepresent, and they somehow, if you say it enough times, it turns out you got people who think it's truth just because they've heard it before. Yeah. So I'm saying all that. Those are the 3 groups. And in boot camp, I'm saying to you, this is who you're going to run into. Don't try to win. Try to keep them in the game.
Yeah, they want to go.
They want to hit you and run.
Yeah, and feel really confident. Feel really like,
and
got it.
It'll empower you to know how little they know. And the first time I tell you what questions they're going to ask you and they do it, you'll be like, oops, that old man was right. He was right. He already knows this guy. You know, he's already met him. He's just had a different name. So that's kind of the reality. Now, I'm going to say to you, though, one of the things you have to be careful of when you're training people, I think, is everybody has a different personality. I mean, I joke about these things, and sometimes I get away with joking where other people might not. Or maybe I'm not really funny, but something about it still lets me get away with it, right? The way I say it. But I'm pretty confident.
Yeah.
And that carries the day a lot. And that's what people are looking for. So if you come to the boot camp, my real intention is to lay out a few simple, suggestions for you, and then say to you, this works, this doesn't. Mainly, I want to build your confidence in the subject matter and in your ability to deal with these people. They're not well armed. It's like you came to a gunfight. I will give you the gun, and I'm only going to give you maybe 6 bullets, but you're going to find out the other guy's got a slingshot. I like your chances. Okay? You bring a slingshot to a gunfight, you better be the champion slingshot guy, I can tell you that. Otherwise, you got no chance at all. And mostly, you're not going to meet him, the championship slingshot guy.
Well, and I think what you said, though, with the personalities, I would never be able to have a discussion about atheism the way you do, because I hear you talking to different people. You say numbers, you say dates real easily. You can remember names. I can't even remember my own grandkids' names. Not really, but
right.
You know what I'm saying? I get like, So I I want to learn these things, but it'll come across more like I can communicate.
Right, and that's what you want.
I want
You
that.
certainly don't want parroting.
No.
Because that's what they do.
That's what they're doing.
No.
They have the script. I don't want a script.
If I'm leading you down that path, I've made a mistake. I do not want
No,
you.
don't want that.
No. Like I say, when I ran an insurance group, right, the mistake I made was I sold life insurance by talking about death. I'd be like, you're going to die, and you want to leave this money for your kids, and the wife's going to get remarried, and I'd talk like that. And the guys would be like,
But the owner was like, stop.
But I was so sincere that I sold tons of it.
No,
I put them under that responsibility of loving their wife and their children, and people would buy from me like crazy. But when I hired people, I taught them, and one cardinal rule in selling life insurance is you don't mention death, you mention benefits. Well, I wasn't doing that. I did it backwards. So every guy who came under my tutelage was trying to sell it the same way I did, and they didn't have my convictions, and it didn't sound like it, and so they were just perishing. I was just killing them. So when I realized my mistake, I just disbanded the group because I knew I couldn't teach them another way. I didn't know that herding them into the corner and stating benefits and tricking them into signing this thing, that was not my way. Mine is much more straightforward. But I realized I better go just sell on my own and forget this other group business. I'm no good at being the group leader. Well, I've learned from that.
Right.
So when it comes to this, I'm the guy who fears making cookie cutter, parroting type of people.
Yes.
You have a different way. So you say to me, well, I can't remember those numbers like that, and I don't know history the same way. I'm going to say to you, well, if I were you, I would steer people, like, how do you feel about the beginnings conversation? Will you put in the time to learn about chance? If I talk to you about chance, will you listen to me? Because you can get chance to where it occurs to you that you don't have to memorize a lot of things to talk about chance and how they're asking you to do something it can't and won't do. How about something from nothing? Here's what they can say to you. I can give you their rainbow of charges and assertions and all those things. But what if I can show you just 2 keys to unlock all of that? Okay, then I'd say to you, what about morality, the right and wrong kind of thing, and purpose in life? Let's stick with those things, okay? You don't have to quote Nietzsche. You don't have to do these things. That's of interest to me.
Yeah.
But you can have your own personal experience,
Right.
just like that story you're telling about on the boat. You can tell that about all kinds of clients, all kinds of things. You have personal experience. That's honesty, intellectual honesty. And I'm saying, if I can't help you with that, I'm failing you.
Makes sense.
Yes, and perhaps I have to learn a lot to do that, because I'm going to be probably surprised by a group of people that come. So I think I know how to give you the foundation, but I don't want you to be cookie cutter. I want you to be you. Right? And play to your strengths.
Right, and plus, besides, it has to be, like you said earlier, I have to believe this. I have to understand it. There is real heart matter in this, because this is.
And I do think that'll be 50% of it, where people will come and they really do want ABC answers. And I'm saying what's more important and usually persuades people is honesty, and they know it's personal to you. A lot of people say, "You persuaded me," but I know you believe it, and I say, "Don't believe it for that reason. It has to be yours." Remember when I was telling Bina, I want it to be yours.
Yes.
You have to go home and wrestle with Romans 7 and Romans 8 and Romans 9. You go home, you do it. I'll help you all I can. You pick up that phone up. I'll tell you what he meant or didn't mean, and what I think something else is.
Not any doctrine of life.
You have to own it. It has to be yours.
Yeah.
You're going to be alone talking to your son. I'm not going to be there. You can't just call me in. I'll be happy to. But that's not the way life really should work. You're his father. You need to deal with your own son. Okay? Now, if I can help you, and sometimes I can use help with my own son.
Yeah.
Right? But it comes to that thing where I have to be prepared.
Yeah,
You can't just, I'm not a hired gun.
No.
You say, well, Bill will have fun. But that's why we're doing these things, okay? So I want to give you a couple of the background things that I think, and you tell me if you agree preparing to do this. Like, here's a quote by Aristotle. And of course, you don't have to buy any of my quotes. I just happen to make me think about it the right way, about how to think about thinking.
Yeah.
Okay? In the brain of the wisest of men always resides the corner of a fool. In the brain of the wisest of men always resides the corner of a fool. That humbles you.
Yeah.
That's what you have to remember.
Check.
And it's what I'm saying that the elitists don't remember. And frankly, it's hard to say elitist without putting all of those main speakers for atheism in that class. They really have a very high regard for their own abilities, and they have not that corner of the fool in their mind. They think everything they say is mountaintop stuff. And I say these things, and because I'm just some two-bit scuffler from Nowheresville, I tend to remember real quickly. Remember who you are now, right? You're the guy sitting out behind the hotel in Oshkosh, busted. Okay, that's who you are. So I tend to remember that guy exists somewhere in my head, and I'm suspicious of him. Okay, now this is one I got from Alexander Pope that I've always liked. See if you like this. Men must be taught as if they were not. Okay, this is kind of how he's saying how you hold these discussions. And the thing unknown as if it's the thing forgot. In other words, when you teach people because of their weakness, often, right, that when you're teaching them, like that last line, he's saying, when you teach me something new, maybe the best way to do it because of my weakness is to teach it as if it's something I've just forgotten. See, you're like, I'm sure you know this, Bill, but remember, like whenever this happens, the right way to do this, and I'm like, oh yeah, well I didn't know it. I just got taught that, but you were generous enough to treat it like, right? And he's saying, whenever there's something's going to be taught, you want to be careful to say it in a way as if you're not teaching me.
A little teacher talk.
Yeah. So you don't set the guy down and say, now I'm going to educate you. You really can do it. That's why I tend to say, let me teach you how to ask them questions, right? And that's what I try to do. To keep from being,
I'm on the mountaintop of your time.
yes, I'm gonna educate you. I just say, what do you think about this idea? Here's the trouble I have with the concept that you're putting out there. I think. Tell me if I'm wrong. How do you deal with this? How do you explain that? Right? If I were reasoning through that, I might worry about where it leads me. Where do you think it leads if we follow your thinking, if you're right? See, I'm asking a series of questions, but I'm leading him to the weak spot in his argument inside my head, but he doesn't know that because I'm just asking questions. He's answering. He may be tying himself in knots when he's doing it, but I'm trying not to get him to where I want, and he runs out the door like a defeated dog.
No, that's conversation. People are influencing, and you are to get what I.
And remember, I wanted to graduate from conversation to discussion. I want the exchange of ideas. I want to hear his ideas. And like I say to you, today mostly nobody ever lets me give them their ideas. They've been in this college culture, they just are stuck with this, they're going to blab it out. So they only give me one chance, and that's for me to be gentle and probe what they think, And
if it gets too convicting, it's just the
Sure,
cancel.
sure. And sometimes a guy will say to you, you can say things like, one of the things that's troubled me about what you were saying is, like, this happened. I've got an interest in sort of some historical things, and this is sort of what happened. Like these people getting arrested for teaching Jesus, like when Richard Dawkins says things like, "You ought to be arrested for teaching Christian doctrine to your children, teaching them about Jesus. Let them grow up and they can get it when they're 16, right? Don't indoctrinate them." But they did that in the Soviet Union. I don't know if you're aware of it. See, now, did you ever hear any of that? No, I never heard anybody. They're like, no. I'm like, yeah, think about the tragedy of this, right? And this is what happens. And lots of times a guy like Dawkins will make this mistake. and I don't know if he does it on purpose, I think. He tells a story like during the Spanish Inquisition. So no matter who you are in this game, if you talk to these charlatans, you're going to be defending the Spanish Inquisition and the Crusades, because they just do this. And I think that guy on your cruise ship thing you're talking about, he went after the Crusades. Yeah, I never thought I'd be born to be the Crusaders' defender, their attorney. But at any rate, so he'll say things like, well, I'll tell you what happened. The Catholic Church did this awful thing. Like, what did they do? It was a 6-year-old Jewish boy. This is a real story he tells. 6-year-old Jewish boy is baptized by a little Catholic girl. So the Catholics kidnapped the little Jewish boy. You're like, what? So he tells this story, and he says, can you see what religion has done now? And this is how we wind up with the Holocaust or something. And you're like, hold on a minute, right? So, but if you say to the average guy, suppose you and I made up a tale like this. You know, we saw that little fisherman boy, about 15-year-old boy. He had that 11-year-old boy, remember? And he was giving him, all about how to make money with a paper route. Remember that? And we just leave. Now, from that one incident, regardless of how you fill that into that paper route story out the way you want, what kind of conclusion can we draw about mankind in general, or a whole group of paper boys in general, or a whole group of 15-year-olds in general? And you'd be like, I don't even know where you're headed with this, Bill. I'm like, exactly. That's why when somebody like Richard Dawkins does it, he only does it to make a fool of himself in my eyes. He does it in his own eyes because you're easily persuaded that he drew a direct line from one single incident in history and made it blossom into chaos and Holocaust, right, hundreds of years later. How did he do that? Well, he blamed it on, you let him sell you on this idea that religion is the ruination of everything. Okay? So that no greater evil exists than religion. And here's proof of it. Look what this happened in this incident. Well, how do I know what the Catholic Church was doing? I'm not a defender of the Catholic Church anyway.
That was the game. That was that whole cruise, was to explain how they brought out all these things that, Catholic Church aren't, it's not even a Christian thing. None of them were Christians, and he even said Hitler was a Christian.
If they know you're a Protestant Christian, they should not make me defend what Rome did in the Inquisition.
No.
I have enough trouble defending real Christians that are alive today, including myself. So when you see this, it's supposed to humble you, but you need to know their tricks. And here's another one. Listen to this one. Knowledge is proud that it knows so much. Wisdom is humble that it knows so little. See, wisdom is, you say to yourself, much I know very little. I could be wrong, right? That's why I'm going to listen to your point. You might be able to persuade me. And remember, I don't want you to win. I want you to persuade. Okay? So I was going to tell you what book Sam Harris wrote. I'm going to stop right there because I want people to think about that idea. That's the primary idea that I'm selling, right? It isn't about winning. It's about persuading, and persuading comes in small chunks, and persuading comes on the heels of discussion and exchange of ideas, not a one-way construction.
And it comes out of a position of being persuaded for real,
not
just parroting.
Amen.
You gotta own it.
I think that's why I want to do these boot camps, because I think we can help people with that.
Right, and there are going to be small enough groups that you can actually have these discussions.
Yeah. Let's do it.
All right, let's do it.
All right.